Okay, in today's video, we are going to be doing Module 2, Lesson 13, and that is subtracting mixed numbers. So, unlike our lesson from yesterday, we will have numbers that are both mixed. So our minuend and our subtrahend are both mixed numbers, meaning they have a whole number and a fraction attached to them. So something that's really important today to remember is you cannot subtract fractions that have different denominators, which is why we have to create equivalent fractions that do have like denominators. So I'm just going to jump right in. We're going to do a couple of practice problems, and then I want you to try a few on your own, and then we will go over it so you can check your work. So we're going to start off with a practice problem that is 5 3/4 minus 2 1/2. Now, whenever we're doing this, I've shown you several different ways, but what I have never shown you is stacking those numbers. So just like when we do big numbers and we're subtracting them, we can stack those numbers. So I'm going to stack this just like we would do big numbers. So I'll do 5 3/4 minus 2 1/2. Okay, so first off, I want to start with the fractions. When I subtract the fractions, I again cannot do that if they have different denominators. So because I can't do that, I need to create equivalent fractions here that have a common denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and regroup these, not regroup them, rename them, okay? So I'm going to think about what is a good common denominator between 4 and 2. And hopefully we've done this enough that you are automatically thinking 4 is a good denominator. So I'm going to keep my whole number here, and I'm going to keep 3/4 because I already have fourths as my denominator. Then I'll have 2, and I need to change this fraction. So this fraction here, 1/2, into another fraction. Now in order to get from 2 to 4, okay, I need to do times 2, which means I need to do the same to the top. So I will have 2/4 there. Now, I'm going to put a little note up here for you to write. Subtract the fractions before the whole numbers. And that is really important because later on we're going to have different numbers where this fraction will be smaller than this one. And we may have to borrow from our whole number. So that's really important to look at. Where just like we do our big numbers with no fractions, we have to subtract from that smaller place value. Okay, so 3/4 minus 2/4, that is going to be 1/4. So our pieces stay the same, our size denominators stay the same, and then we need to take that numerator minus that denominator to get our final numerator. Then I'm just going to do 5 minus 2 to get 3. So 3 1/4 is my answer. Okay, now let's look at number 2. We'll just do another example. Let's do 7 1/3 minus 3 5/6. Okay. So again, I'm just gonna stack them. I think this is the easiest way to do it, honestly. Just visualizing it wise. Now I'll also do it over here. In a non-stacking way in case your brain works that way better. So I'm already going to look at and see these very obviously do not have the same denominators, so I need to rename those fractions. I'm going to keep my whole numbers, okay, and I'm going to look and see I have 3 and I have 6. I need to find a least common denominator for these. Hopefully we've done this enough, again, that you are thinking 6 is a great denominator. So I want 6 to be my denominator on both of these mixed numbers. Now, to get from 3 to 6, I have to multiply by 2, so I need to do the same to the top. Same down here, I already have 6 as my denominator, so I'm just going to keep that same fraction. Okay, let's look at this. Like I said earlier, it's important we do that smaller spot because we might have situations like this where I'm gonna have to borrow from my whole number. So I'm gonna put a little star here and says we need to borrow from the whole. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just circle this right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of give you a whole new section on borrowing from that. Okay, so 7 2/6. I need to make that, if I were to decompose this 3 ways, okay? And you might not have to do this every time. This is just for now so you can visualize it. I'm going to decompose that 7 like I did yesterday. I'm going to decompose that 7 into 6. And then here, I'm going to have something that's equivalent to 1 whole. I'm going to make it 6/6. And then I have that mixed number tacked on the side there. Okay? So now, this could also be equal to 6. I'm going to take these numerators together. And 8/6. Okay? So now, my new problem is going to be 6 8/6 minus 3 5/6. 8 minus 5 is going to give us 3. 6th is our denominator. 6 minus 3 is 3. So our final answer is 3 3/6. Now, we should be able to simplify that into 3 1/2. That's not the important step. The important step is getting to here, that mixed number here. Okay, now I did say I would do it over here on the left in a different way, kind of less broken down. Hopefully now that you've seen it on the right side, why it is that way, it'll be easier for you to do it this way on the left. So essentially, we've talked about we don't want our final answers to be an improper form. So it's okay if I change the way I look at a mixed number. It's okay if I change the way I look at a fraction, as long as it's not my final answer, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and take this 7 2/6, and we've already discussed the fact that we can't take 5/6 from 2/6. So just like we do when we have multi-digit subtraction, we can stack those numbers and borrow from the next place value. So I'm going to break this down into basically 6 plus 1 plus 2/6. Okay? So this number is basically this number right here. It's the same thing, just different form. Okay? Now, I'm going to put some parentheses around that, because I still want to know, like, I am taking that 3 5/6 away, but I got to do all this other stuff first. I can then turn that whole into, because I have sixths here, I want to turn that into 6/6 plus 2/6. Okay? Minus 3 5/6. All right, well, now I can see I have 6/6 here that I could take this 5/6 away from. Or I could just make this 6 8/6 minus 3 5/6. Then I can just take my whole numbers, so 6 minus 3, which is 3, 8 minus 5, which is 3, and make that 3 3/6. As you know, that equals 3 1/2. Okay, so it seems like a lot of steps. It's really not once you get the hang of it. You just have to make sure that you're taking your time. You're looking at each step carefully. Don't rush through it, and do not give up. It is not too hard. I promise you, once you do it a couple times, you're like, man, this is easy. I can do it. Okay, so you got this. We're going to practice a couple more in your workbook. All right, go ahead and flip to page 113 in your workbook. And I do not want you to just copy down the answers on this page. I feel like you really, really need to get in the habit of watching how I'm doing it, maybe at least on the first one or two. And then I want you to pause throughout this video once you feel comfortable trying it on your own. Not comfortable with getting it perfect, but comfortable trying it on your own. I want you to pause it and try it on your own and then check your answers. Checking your answer does not mean just checking to see if your answer is right. That means watching how I do it to make sure that you are on the right track. Okay, this is learning the skill. You are not taking your test right now. You are learning the skill. So you need to practice. Okay, so if you notice numbers 1 and 2, number 2 has drastically more room on the paper than number 1 does, and you'll see why here in a sec. Okay, so I'm first going to start by looking at my denominators here. I have 8 and 16 as denominators. So I'm going to go ahead and think, all right, well, my least common denominator is going to be 16. Okay, you can already see 16 is a multiple of 8. So I hope that we're automatic and comfortable enough to know that we are going to want 16ths as our denominator, okay? So the easiest thing for me is to go ahead and just change that fraction into 16ths. So I'm going to change that mixed number into 16ths, okay? Because odds are I may have a mixed number like this where I can easily just take numerator minus numerator. So I'm going to do 4 minus 2, which is my whole numbers, and then numerator minus numerator. So I'll have 7/16. 2 and 7/16. Okay? Now number 2, I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to look at my least common denominator. So I have a denominator of 6 and 12. I hope that we're comfortable enough to know that we should probably make it 12ths, okay? So I'm going to make this 9, and because I need to do 6 times 2 to get to 12, I'm going to do the same to the top, minus 4 and 10/12, okay? So I can clearly see I cannot take 10/12 from 2/12. So I'm going to need to decompose that number and break it up. Now I'm going to take my work over to the side here because this is how my brain works. I don't work well with just writing it down, so I like to draw it out. I'm going to decompose this number into 8. This should be a 1. So 1 whole. But I'm going to make that equal to what my denominator already is. And then I can't forget this 2/12 here. Okay, so I'm seeing I have 12, 13, 14 12ths here. So I'm going to have 8 and 14 12ths. I can now take away my 4 and 10/12. 8 minus 4 is 4. 14 minus 10 is 4. So I will have 4 and 14/12. That then can simplify to 4 and 1/3. That's because if I divide 12 by 4, I can get 3. And if I divide 4 by 4, I can get 1. So those are equivalent fractions. So 4 and 1/3 is my final answer. Okay, now I really, really want you to pause the video here and try these next two on your own before you check your answers. Again, don't just write the answer down. I want you to check your answers and write down the work that I do. So pause the video now. Okay, now that you have tried these on your own, let me go over the answers so we can make sure you're on the right track. I'm going to make these a common denominator of 12. So here I will need to do 4 times 3 and 1 times 3. That'll give me 8 and 3/12 minus 5 and 7/12. Well, I can't take 7/12 away from 3/12. So again, I'm going to decompose this 8 3/12 over here. 8 3/12. Now, I just want to mention up here I did make a little bit of a mistake. This should be 9 2/12 decomposed into that. So make sure we're decomposing that whole mixed number and not just that whole number. Okay, I'm going to decompose this to, not 8, silly me, 7 12/12 and 3/12. So now I can see that I have 7 and 12, 13, 14, 15 twelfths minus 5 and 7/12. Then my final answer will be 7 and 8/12. That can be simplified to, let's see, I can divide both of them by 4. 12 minus 4 is 3, 12 divided by 4 is 3, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so that will be 7 2/3. So my final answer is 7 2/3. Now if you got 7 8/12, that's wonderful. We'll just work on that simplifying, okay? Now I want you to make sure that you have tried number 4 before you continue on. So if you have not tried number 4, pause the video now. All right, now that you have tried number 4 on your own, let's look and see. I have 16 and 4. A good common denominator for those two is going to be 16. Okay, so I'm going to have 18, and I already have 16ths here in my minuend. I just need to change my subtrahends denominator. So if I have 3/4 and I want to change that to 16ths, I need to multiply them both by 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, well, I can't do 5/16 minus 12/16, so again, I need to decompose that. I'm going to break that minuend down into 17, 16/16, and 5/16. So now I can put my new mixed number over here, which would be 17 and 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 17 and 21/16 minus 7 and 12/16. I can then have 10 and 9/16 as my final answer.